Welcome to Day with FMZ, a global initiative to bring in the leaders' perspective across different locations to understand what happens globally and also understand the best practices and also education series to those who are aspiring to take up this as a profession for them to build up a roadmap and a path. And today we have Mr. Roshan Gowda, who heads SAP, and my co-host Lisa. Welcome, Roshan and Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vinay. Hi, Lisa.
Roshan, hi. Thank you so much for joining us. You are an evolutionary. You seem to have spearheaded efforts for the evolution of some really groundbreaking technologies that optimize and stimulate employee performance. In what ways, according to you, can technology enhance the workplace experience?
Thanks, Lisa. I think yes. I mean, probably technology. A conversation on technology is probably the most relevant thing that we could do today. Um, I think as far as workplace technology is concerned, I personally have long believed that if it's in your pocket, it has to be at your workplace. And the context for saying that is, if you recall, for the longest time, there used to be a bit of a dichotomy between the technologies that we used to use back at home, the ride sharing apps or the food ordering apps and whatnot. Whereas the technology that we had at our workplaces was always um, lagging behind, right? So that cannot be the case anymore. Also, because the lines between the physical workplace and technology have blurred today like never before. And as we come out of COVID, a lot of some of the biggest focus areas are collaboration, networking, and wellness, employee well-being. And apart from other things, technology is probably the biggest enabler for these parameters of collaboration and wellness. And I guess we realized during the last 2.5 years that none of us were really prepared, and none of us had really trained for managing teams virtually as well as across geographies. And that's where this question becomes even more relevant. For example, it's fairly straightforward to foster in-person collaboration. We've been doing that for several decades now, and for close to 1 decade, it's also been reasonably second nature to enable virtual collaborations. I think what happened was the rubber started meeting the road when we started having combinations of physical and virtual audiences, which is actually the norm now. That these are the kinds of case studies and use cases where technology probably becomes even more relevant. I remember uh, 10, 12 years back, we used to talk about the physical workplace, the design of the workplace, and technology as both extremely important teams and stakeholders. But now you can't speak about one without actually talking about the other, and it's kind of COVID has probably expedited that whole transformation. In terms of actual technologies, I guess I would say AI and IoT have been leading the way for a really long time, both in terms of more mundane uh, workplace requirements like, say, document management, work management, collaboration, networking, cybersecurity, and data analytics. But also in terms of other more nuanced requirements like occupancy sensing and utilization studies and all of that. So a lot of these technologies, and add to AI and IoT, I would say, add digital and cloud. I think these have pretty much become the buzzword today. And all of these are things that we keep seeing evolving in our workplace. Not everything is always relevant, but we've been kind of trying in a small measure to kind of keep implementing whatever is relevant within a framework of time and cost.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
so much.
Roshan. I think you summed it up. And today, when we look at the workplace, typically everybody are looking at getting people back to work, and it's becoming more of my space into a collaborative space, typically, and how collaboration can happen. And also, what is the future is all about hybrid workplaces, like organization looking at. And as you keep talking about the technology, I think you also believe that the hyper personalized digital interfaces will power the hybrid workplaces of the future. What does that it look like to an employee or a customer? So how do you think that? How do they perceive that?
Yeah, I mean that's probably, to be honest, that's probably one of the more newer concepts. At least for me personally, I'm no technology guru. I'm just talking about what makes sense to me, especially in the framework of the workplace and corporate real estate. But if you recall, hyper personalization for the longest time was typically about marketing products and services to individual consumers by building specific individual profiles. However, in the workplace, the hyper personalization, sorry, relates more to the employee experience as an increasing expectation, especially in our current environment where we have a major skills shortage and where the balance of power, at least as of now, is shifting a bit towards employees. I mean, I personally believe it's a bit of a bubble which is waiting to burst. But having said that, there's no doubt about the fact that we have a lot more choices available to our employees, and personalizing their the workplace experiences is probably one way of kind of attracting and retaining the best talent. While we've for a long time believed that one size doesn't fit all, and that's true for a work environment, we understand that the work arrangements that we foster need to work equally for employers and employees. I think that's where the hyper personalization comes in. Do we have the ability within our specific profitability margins to be able to give choices to our employees in terms of choice of where they want to work, what time do they start, what time do they want to end, and also to a great extent about what is the kind of work they want to kind of be involved in. All of that is falls under the realm of hyper personalization. Obviously, these are not just questions for workplace professionals like ourselves, but it also involves business folks. It involves human resource teams. But in all, I think the one thing that everybody is understanding and completely acknowledging that you can't uh, close your eyes to the fact that people have gotten used to a certain bouquet of options in terms of how they want to perform their work, and you can't kind of ignore that. As a lot of, I mean, as a lot of people have been saying, and it's true that the war for talent is well and truly here.
Thank you, Roshan. I think technology, though it drives, I think we also need to look at personalization. Um, Lisa, you want to go with the
Yes.
next question?
Yeah, so that really points to employee well-being. So, as the head of global real estate and facilities at SAP, how are you preparing your facilities to focus on well-being? What does that mean in your organization?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bunch of things, right? I mean, I still remember the time when well-being, wellness was always important, but it was probably, let's call it, it was a bit of a good to have. I think what has well and truly happened over the last decade is that it's no longer a good to have, it's a must have. And again, like a lot of other things, COVID probably acted as a bit of a transformational kind of an agent. What would have ideally taken us about 7, 8, 9 years to bring wellness into boardroom conversations has kind of happened over the last 2, 2.5 years. So for starters, it's a given. Nobody can really talk about that as a choice anymore. In terms of specifics, it's the works, right? And a lot more evolved corporates, a lot more evolved employers are raising the bar on what they need to do. But if you talk about the basics, I think it is about choice, as we spoke a couple of minutes back. It's about choice of timing. It's about choice of work location. It's also about choice of where and when you want to kind of perform your duties. But then it's also about the kind of the physical workplace. For the longest time, the physical workplace or the office that people used to go to was the biggest differentiator and it was what I call the cultural glue that used to keep the office together, and in a way the physical workplace used to define the culture of an organization. Culture is made up of many things, but I think the physical workplace was definitely one of them. uh, but in terms of do we, if employees have the ability to walk into their office knowing fully well that they are probably at their safest whilst they are at their workplace. That to me is a very simple definition of wellness. But then you kind of take it and expand it. I like to not call it employee wellness. I like to call it wellness, human well-being. It starts right from the time it's a big topic. It starts right from the topic of where you start scouting for real estate. If you're a leased occupier, you start looking at the right real estate. You start looking at the right buildings. It's not just about certifications like LEED or WELL. It is also about whether you have the ability to not just install the right equipment and systems in your buildings, but it's also about whether you keep track of how optimally these systems and platforms are performing. It is also I mean, at the next stage, then it's about ensuring that you have the right tools within your workplace, which keep a track on indoor air quality and the works, so that you're at all points of time you are uh, you're ensuring that your employees are breathing in the right balance of air as well. Because I think what people have realized over the last few years is that it's not just about the more tangible outcomes that you bring to the workplace, but quite often the difference is also is created by the more intangible issues at work. So some of these are aspects. Plus, I think increasingly what we're seeing is the kind of amenities that you provide to your employees. Are we able to create what some people call it like a whole life experience? And that's a very interesting term that I came across very recently. Are you able to kind of provide them to your employees? You come into your office. Not only do you kind of get your business outcomes done, your work outcomes done, but when you're packing up for the day, do you also have the ability to do everything else that you wanted to do in that day? Sorry. Because, and you can't shy away from that fact, because if for a lot of people it has become a choice. People are deciding to come into office 2 days a week, 3 days a week. While I have a feeling that some of those things are going to settle down, but hybrid work is obviously here to stay. That's not going anywhere. So when you do that, are you able to create that hook to your employees that if you're going to be coming in for X number of days a week to your workplace, do you have the ability to create a whole life experience for them? So all of that, I think, is part of what I feel is optimum well-being and wellness conditions for your employee.
Thank you, Roshan. I think holistically you covered well-being is not just from one factor, just about how we create office spaces, but also from the evaluation of what kind of space I need to be in, what kind of equipment we use, how do we monitor and measure the air quality, water quality, and also giving now it's no more a traditional way of running business. It's all about creating flexibility and more looking at from a outcome of employee satisfaction, efficiency, and productivity. And you've been contributed to the industry for almost 2 decades with respect to real estate. And from what you've been contributed to the industry, you've also been recognized as a thought leader across the APAC region. And what is the most important advice for an FM evolving workplace standards and best practices post COVID?
I mean, I'll try to probably break that down into two parts, right? I mean, one is from a subject matter perspective. I would probably repeat what I just said. I think. I mean, I won't tom the whole idea of flexibility too much, but the fact is that human experience, as I call it, employee experience, customer experience. I mean, all of these are topics that are going to be absolutely important. Just a minute. Are you folks still there? I can't see you much.
Yes, yes, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Apologies. Yeah. So I was saying that yeah, so I think that the whole concept of employee experience and human experience is something that I strongly advise all aspiring and young FM professionals to kind of keep in mind, because increasingly human experience and employee experiencing is becoming business talk. It's becoming boardroom conversations. We as workplace professionals have a seat at the table when it comes to some of these topics. You can't These are not anymore enablers to business outcomes, but these are all a part of the business outcome itself. So I think that's what I would kind of say should become our biggest focus point. And at a slightly more informal level, I would also kind of tell them, that get in all, soak in all the experiences that you can, rather than kind of focusing on just what you are, what your core is. Retain your core subject matter expertise, but over a career, I think it's important that you kind of get in as many experiences as possible. It doesn't typically mean that you become a bit of a jack in the box, but I think it's important to kind of have a lot more well-rounded capability so that you understand every nuance of what your work impacts, and always keep an eye on the business outcomes, because I think the more we realize as to what your work contributes in the larger scheme of things, I think it's a lot easier for us to kind of contribute. So that typically would be what I normally say this very often to folks entering the industry now.
Thank you, Roshan. I think you covered it well. And holistically, looking at real estate is not just a place; it's also how it can have an impact, embedding human factors, technology, looking at a business outcome. I think binding all this together is very, very important. And Lisa, you want to just add up to this? Any few points?
It was, I just really appreciate your summary and your responses. It was spot on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roshan, and thank you, Luisa. I think one of the things we also keep looking at is what is the new of creating a workplace. I think if you look at 2 decades back and today, we came into this agile workspace, and today we're talking about flexible workplace and hybrid workplace. And I always say that we build best to best workplace, but people is very, very important, right? So how do we get people back to work? And there is no life within the physical building if there are no people. I think promoting people coming back to work and bringing in collaboration. I think innovation can only happen through collaboration. So there's a lot of things an FM leader or a RE leader can contribute to this, making things more effective and efficient, and embedding human factor and technology. Thank you, Roshan, for being here today. It was such an insight from you. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye bye.
Thank you.